Hello, everyone. My name is Margaret, and I am 72 years old. I want to start with something a little unusual for this channel. You come here for cleaning and organizing and decluttering, and that is what I love talking about. But today I need to tell you something different, something that I think matters more than any cleaning tip I could share, because it is about the foundation underneath all of it. About what makes it possible to maintain your home, your independence, and your quality of life year after year when you are living alone. I have been living alone for nearly 10 years now. When Robert passed, people told me many things, that I would struggle, that I would need help, that a woman alone in a house was a woman waiting for something to go wrong. I understand why they said those things, and I know they came from genuine care, but they were wrong. I am healthier now than I was at 60, not because of anything dramatic, because of 8 habits that I built one at a time over the years of living alone that have kept my body and my mind and my daily life in better shape than I had any particular reason to expect. I want to share all 8 of them with you today, honestly and specifically, because I think they are the reason I am still here, still tending my garden, still managing my own home, still fully capable of the life I want to live. And because I think if you are living alone, or if someone you love is living alone, these things might matter to you too. Habit number 1. Water before anything else every single morning. I want to start with the one that surprised me most because it was the simplest and it made the most immediate difference. For most of my adult life, my morning began with coffee. I was a librarian for 34 years. Coffee was practically required, and I never thought to question it. What I did not understand until several years into living alone was what was happening in my body during those first waking minutes. After a full night of breathing and existing, the body has used a significant amount of its water. The joints are stiff partly because of this. The mind is foggy partly because of this. The heaviness of the early morning that I had always attributed simply to age was in meaningful part thirst. I began keeping a glass of water on my nightstand every evening. Not coffee, not tea, plain water. And every morning, before I stood up, before I spoke, before I did anything else, I drank it. The effect within the first week was noticeable enough that I paid attention. My knees felt different getting out of bed. The morning fog cleared faster. By the end of the second week, I had stopped gripping the counter when I stood at the sink. I have not gone back. The coffee still happens. I enjoy it too much to give it up, and I see no reason to. But it happens after the water, not instead of it. The order matters more than I would have believed. Tell me in the comments, do you begin your morning with water, or do you go straight to coffee or tea? I ask because this is the habit that most people I know have never tried, and I think the response I get will be interesting. Habit number 2. Outside in the morning light, every day without exception. I had a neighbor years ago, a woman I was very fond of, who told me that one of the most important things she did for her health was to be outside in the morning light before her day had fully started. She said it with such certainty that I listened, but I did not act on it for years. I thought I understood it as a general idea without needing to actually do it. Then I realized I had spent most of the previous winter going from the bedroom to the kitchen to the living room and rarely stepping outside until mid-afternoon at the earliest. And the quality of those winter months, looking back, had a certain heaviness to it that I had attributed to the season itself rather than to what I was doing with the season. I began stepping outside for 10 or 15 minutes every morning, regardless of weather, not walking, not exercising, just standing, looking at the garden, letting the morning light reach my face and my eyes. In rain, I stand under the porch roof. In cold, I wrap a shawl around my shoulders and accept the chill as the price of the freshness. What I found within a couple of weeks was a shift in the quality of my sleep, in my mood through the day, and in what I can only describe as a sense of orientation, of being connected to where I actually am and what the day actually is. I now understand that this works because of something physiological about morning light and the body's internal rhythms. I will not pretend to explain the science precisely. What I know is the experience. I am a different person on the days I go outside in the morning than on the days I stay in. Before I continue, a quick word. If you enjoy this channel and want to support my work, just look directly below the video player, right next to the subscribe button, and click the button that says join. That is how you become a Smart Organizer. Smart Organizers members get exclusive videos, a loyalty badge in the comments, and custom channel emojis. I would love to have you there. Habit number 3, 4 minutes of deliberate mental work before the day begins. This one I arrived at through something that frightened me. About 3 years into living alone, I walked into my kitchen one morning and stood in front of the counter for what felt like 2 or 3 minutes, genuinely unable to remember why I had come in. Not a brief moment of forgetting, a sustained blankness that felt like something significant. I stood there and thought, I will not let this become more. And I began doing something every morning that I think of as waking my mind up deliberately, rather than letting it drift into the day. I sit at the breakfast table with a small notebook. I give each of these 4 things 1 minute. First, a simple arithmetic problem, nothing demanding, just enough to require actual calculation. Second, a specific memory that I try to see in detail. The pattern of the kitchen tiles in my mother's house, the particular light in the school library on a November afternoon, what the garden smelled like on a morning I remember clearly. Third, 4 words I do not use regularly, said out loud and placed in a sentence. Fourth, a quiet picture of my day unfolding well, specific, concrete, calm. 4 minutes. I have not, in the years since I started this, had another morning like the one in the kitchen. Whether that is cause and effect, I cannot say with certainty. What I can say is that my mind at 72 feels sharper and more reliable than it did at 69 when I was not doing this. Tell me in the comments, do you have any kind of practice for actively exercising your mind in the mornings? I am genuinely curious whether this is something others have stumbled onto independently, or whether it is still fairly unusual. Habit number 4, 7 minutes of gentle movement before any other physical demand of the day. I want to be careful about how I describe this, because the word exercise carries connotations that do not belong here. I do not exercise in the mornings. What I do is spend 7 minutes returning my body to its full range of motion before I ask it to do anything else. For years, I made the mistake of simply getting up and starting the day, and my body complained accordingly. Stiffness that took until mid-morning to resolve. A quality of heaviness in the joints that I had accepted as simply what mornings felt like at my age. I began questioning that acceptance, and what I found was that the stiffness was not inevitable. It was the result of asking my body to go from 8 hours of stillness to full use without any intermediate step. My routine now is 7 minutes of slow, seated, and standing movement. Shoulder circles, both directions. Slow knee lifts from a seated position. A gentle lean forward in a doorway to open the chest. Shallow knee bends at the kitchen counter, holding the counter lightly. Ankle circles, one foot, then the other. None of this hurts. None of it pulls or strains. It is simply the body being asked, gradually and gently, to remember that it can move. The difference it makes is disproportionate to the time it takes. I get up from chairs without bracing. I carry shopping without the stiffness in my hands that used to arrive by the time I reached the car. I move through my house with a quality of ease that I had stopped expecting and that has come back. Please subscribe if you are not yet subscribed. Every week I share what I've learned about keeping a home and keeping yourself well at this stage of life. Habit number 5, real protein at breakfast, not habit food. For most of my adult life, breakfast was whatever was quick and familiar. Toast, sometimes with peanut butter, a piece of fruit, coffee. I ate it without much thought as background to the morning, rather than as a deliberate act of feeding myself well. What I noticed, slowly and then more clearly, was that I was often genuinely tired by mid-morning. Not the tiredness of poor sleep, a specific kind of energy depletion that came earlier than it should and sat heavier than it should. And when I thought carefully about what I had been eating and when, the connection was hard to miss. I changed breakfast to center on protein, 2 eggs with whatever vegetable is available, Greek yogurt with a handful of nuts, occasionally a small amount of cottage cheese alongside fruit. The specifics vary, but the principle is consistent. The first meal gives the body something to actually work with. Within 2 weeks of changing this, the mid-morning tiredness was gone, not diminished, gone. I could work in the garden through the morning without flagging. I could carry things I had been struggling with. I felt, in a way I had almost forgotten was available, actually fed. Tell me in the comments, what does your breakfast typically look like? I ask with genuine curiosity and no judgment, because I think this is one of the habits most of us have never seriously reconsidered since we formed it 30 years ago. Habit number 6, tending the home in small daily acts rather than large occasional ones. I know this sounds like the cleaning channel topic rather than the health topic, but I include it here deliberately because I have come to understand that the state of my home has a direct and consistent effect on my health in ways that go beyond aesthetics. When I was managing my house in the old way, large and frequent cleaning sessions interspersed with days of accumulation, there was a quality of low-level tension in my daily life that I did not fully recognize until it was gone. The unfinished state of surfaces, the things that needed doing, the awareness always somewhere in the back of my attention that the house was behind and I was behind with it. When I shifted to the daily small acts, the whole texture of living in this house changed. the kitchen wiped down at the end of each evening, a surface addressed before it has time to accumulate, the 10-minute walk through before bed that resets everything. The house stays clean not through effort, but through consistency. And the mental effect of living in that kind of order is genuinely health adjacent. I am less tense. I sleep better. I begin each morning in a space that feels ready rather than waiting. I do not really clean my house anymore. I just tend to it every day in small ways. And the difference between those two things is the difference between a burden and a habit. Habit number 7, being intentional about social connection, especially the connections you initiate yourself. Living alone means that social connection does not happen automatically. It has to be built and maintained deliberately. I understood this intellectually long before I understood it practically, and the gap between those two understandings cost me some isolated seasons that I would have managed better with earlier knowledge. The habit I have built is specific and simple. I am the one who calls. I am the one who suggests the coffee, the walk, the visit. I do not wait to be thought of. I think of others and I act on it. This feels unnatural at first, or it felt unnatural to me, because something in how I was raised equated reaching out with imposing. I have spent years unlearning that equation. What I found is that when I call, people are almost always glad to hear from me. That the women I am most fond of are, many of them, in the same position, hoping to be thought of, glad when they are. Being the one who initiates is not a burden. It is the mechanism by which real connection stays alive. Daniel and his family call regularly, and I genuinely love those conversations. But my social world does not depend on their availability. It has its own fabric, woven from my own initiative, and that independence is part of what keeps me well. Tell me in the comments, are you the kind of person who waits to be called, or do you reach out first? I think this is one of the most practically important questions about living alone at this age, and I suspect the answers will vary more than I expect. Habit number 8, ending every day with a deliberate close. The last habit is the one that ties all the others together, and it is one I have been practicing long enough that it has become as natural as sleeping itself. Every evening, before I go to bed, I do the same small set of things to close the day. I close the kitchen, counter wiped, sink emptied and dried, anything that drifted during the day returned to its home. I do a quiet walk through the main rooms, not cleaning, but resetting, making sure nothing has been left in a state that will require attention in the morning. I fill the glass of water for the nightstand. I check that the doors are locked and the lights are as I want them. I sit for a few minutes, sometimes with a book, sometimes just quietly, and I let the day finish properly rather than simply stopping. This ritual costs me perhaps 10 minutes. What it produces is a morning that begins from a clean start rather than from the residue of the previous day. And I have come to believe that this clean start is one of the most important things I give myself, not because the house would be terrible without it, because the quality of a morning that begins in order is genuinely different from the quality of a morning that begins in disorder. And the difference compounds across weeks and months and years. I am 72 years old. I live alone. I tend my garden and my house and my health with real daily attention. And the result is a life that is, most days, genuinely good. Not perfect, not without its hard stretches, but substantively good in the ways that matter. These 8 habits are the reason. Not any single one of them, but all 8 together, building on each other, day after day, until they became simply how I live, rather than things I consciously do. I want to hear from you now. In the comments, tell me which of these 8 you're going to try first. Not the most impressive one, the one that feels most immediately available to you, the one you could begin tomorrow morning without any preparation. That is always the right place to start. I read every single comment. And please subscribe if you are not yet subscribed. Every week I share what I've learned about living well and keeping a home that supports your health and your peace at every stage of this life. Whether the topic is cleaning or habits or simply how to make the days good, these conversations are ones I genuinely value. I will see you next week.